everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's video. Hope you all are having a great day so far. Today we are going to talk about one of my favorite eyeshadow shades to wear on my eyes, Taupe Eyeshadows. I just love these kind of tones on brown eyes, brown skin. So today I'm going to show you some of my favorite ones which I have in my collection, and we will try to do this kind of videos with other eyeshadow shades as well, which I love for brown skin, brown eyes. So if you guys are interested to find out which are my favorite taupe eyeshadows, please continue watching. Taupe is a beautiful, versatile, neutral tone. It lies somewhere between a dark brown and a gray, and you can't really pinpoint that this particular shade is taupe. A taupe will usually have tones of gray, tones of brown mixed in together and creating this beautiful neutral tone, and it has different shades of variations in it. Taupe can be cool, can be warm, can be neutral. It can have tones of green, tones of purple, tones of blue in it as well. So taupe is actually very versatile and it looks good on different kind of skin tones. Don't think that I have warm skin tones so I need to go for warm eyeshadows. Every kind of skin tone will have a taupe which will look good on them. So if you're brown skin, I will definitely encourage you to try this kind of shades. They look amazing. So today I will start off with some single eyeshadows which I have, which I love, and then I will show you some palettes which has some very nice taupe tones in them, so you can pick and choose which taupe you like the most. One of the first taupe shades which I had purchased, which is still available these days, is from Sydney Grace. This is a single eyeshadow. The shade is called Frosted Morning. So if you are going to buy Sydney Grace eyeshadows, you can check out their single shades. This shade is still available. It's a very beautiful, like a brownish medium taupe. It has some elements of browniness in it. It's not that intense, it's very muted. On my eyes it looks quite muted, and if you don't like silver, taupe is something which you can experiment with. It's not going to look too much on the eyes, and in fact today what I have on my eyes is not that deep as well. It's a more lighter taupe shade which I'll show you in the video later. But with the brown and the darker brown eyeshadow, the matte eyeshadows which I've used, it looks like this is a very deep taupe, but it's not. It's a pretty light taupe. So this one falls in more of a medium taupe category. It doesn't have any shimmers, glitters or any kind of flecks. It's just a beautiful metallic taupe shade. It looks so beautiful on the eyes, and I've loved this shade for so long. I've had this eyeshadow for quite some time now. The next single eyeshadow which I think a lot of you will know is from Victoria Beckham. This is very popular mink eyeshadow. The shade name is called Mink. I love the packaging of these eyeshadows, and this is how this one looks like. So this one is a more deeper taupe. This also has hints of brown, elements of brown in it. So it's very similar to the previous one I showed you, but this one is a little bit more deeper and it has flecks of gold and silver. It is super beautiful. It also has some tiger eye infused in it, and it just looks magical on the eyes. I will give you single swatches as well as I'm just swatching it here for comparison. So the bottom one you can see is the Victoria Beckham Mink. It's super gorgeous. You can see how flattering it is. The top one is a little bit more muted. This one is also muted, but not as muted as the previous one. In certain lightings, this one just shines and glimmers in the most beautiful way, and the formulation is also super long wearing. I love wearing this eyeshadow. It's, I think, one of my most worn taupe eyeshadows, which is in the single eyeshadow form. I just love this one. The next one is a newer addition to my collection. This is the Moon Dust eyeshadow. I have recently shown you this in one of my videos. This is the shade Diamond Dog. So this one is described by Urban Decay as a mocha brown with some silver and gold micro pearls, but I think this is a very nice taupe with a hint of brown as the previous ones. This is a little bit more warmer definitely, but it has more effect of that brown tone. So this is Urban Decay Moon Dust. Definitely it has much more sparkly glimmering effect as than the previous two, more than the Victoria Beckham one. This one has more sparkles and glimmer, and it just looks so beautiful. So if you don't want something which is super cool, so the first two, they are pretty cool toned. If you want something more warmer, this one is much more warmer. I think this shade looks more like a taupe because of the silver sparkles in it. It is sort of a brownish taupe, but on the eyes it just looks like a taupe eyeshadow. I just love this one, the Munda shade. And the last single eyeshadow which I have had for years now, this is a Chantecaille Elephant eyeshadow, luminescent eyeshadow in the shade Elephant. I have just loved the packaging of this one, and I have had this for a few years now. Nothing has happened to it, and I've used it a ton. I've used it so much that the pattern on top has kind of faded away, but you can make out that it's kind of a leafy pattern which it had on the top. So this is the taupe which is more on the gray side. As I already mentioned before, that taupe is a shade which is somewhere between a dark brown and a deep gray. So this is leaning more towards the gray. The previous one was leaning more towards the brown. It's a beautiful formula, and this is also really sparkly and very metallic. It has a lot of fine sparkles in it, and it just looks beautiful on the eyes. I will show you a difference. So here is the Elephant shade, the last one. You can see it is very muted in intensity. Pigmentation wise, there is not a whole lot of pigment in here, but the intensity of the sparkles is quite a lot, and it looks just beautiful on the eyes. So this one is a more grayish taupe, this one is a more warm taupe. These will fall in the more neutral, leaning towards cool kind of taupe. This Chantecaille formula is also beautiful. As I already mentioned, it has some fine specks of silver and gold infused, and just because of the color, it looks slightly different on the eyes than the previous shades. I think all of these shades look pretty different on the eyes, and you know, I can play around with different tones of taupe. If you ask me which is your favorite taupe eyeshadow in all of these, I won't be able to choose because they are all very different. Now, if you're not into single eyeshadows and you find that the single eyeshadows I showed you are a little bit too expensive just for one shade, I will show you some palettes which I turn to if I want to create these kind of looks. So let me talk about the palette which I use for this eye look. And this is not one of my absolute favorites, but I still love this eye look which I've created. So this is the Juvia's Place taupe eyeshadow palette, the taupes by Juvia's Place. There is this one shade in this palette, this one, which I have used on the eyes, and this palette is worth it just for that one eyeshadow in this palette. Rest of the eyeshadows are nice, good to work with, they blend well. I think this one is very nice. It has a little bit of that mauvey undertone to it. So I'll cover these kind of shades when I talk about mauve eyeshadows. All shades are actually tones of taupes. As I already mentioned in the video, you can't really pinpoint that this is taupe or that is taupe. Taupe is a collection of colors, and anything in that realm of shade range can be a taupe. So I just love this eyeshadow here because it has flecks of that yellow, gold and blue, and it's super pretty. You can apply it intensely on the eyes, as well as you can sheer it out. When you sheer it out, you will see like flecks of light blue and silver. I'm honestly not sure if they have infused flecks of light blue or silver, but the way it glimmers, it almost looks like it has flecks of light blue, yellow and silver. It's really pretty. So I just love this eyeshadow from this Juvia's Place taupe eyeshadow. It also has a nice matte gray brown shade. So this is a nice palette to have, but you will not have that depth of colors from this palette if you're close to my skin tone. But still, I wanted to show you because this is not a very expensive palette, and that one shade in this palette I think will suit a lot of skin tones. The other Juvia's Place palette, I think if I have to recommend something over this one, if I would say that don't get this one but get this from Juvia's Place, I will say get this one. This is a nice brown toned palette. This is a coffee palette, and it has almost 2-3 tones of that taupes which are leaning more towards brown. So here you will see in this palette This one is a very nice, very nice taupe. It's one of my favorites. It's, I think, my go-to in this palette. I love this taupe shade. It's a more deeper taupe which has slight leaning towards the gray tone, and I think this taupe is just complemented so well with all the other matte shades in the palette. There's two more. I think this one, which is a more brownish taupe. This is also a really beautiful taupe, little bit on the brown side. And then this last one, this also is very similar to the other Juvia's Place palette I showed you, and this also have that flecks of blue and flecks of yellow in it. This is also very nice. So you have different tones of taupe in this palette. Taupes which lean more towards the gray and taupes which lead more toward the dark brown. If you want a nice, not so expensive palette from Juvia's Place with some neutral tones, I think this is a great one, and it also has some beautiful taupe shades. Another eyeshadow palette which I think is done really well is from Colourpop. I think you can still get this palette if you want from Colourpop. This is also something which is not super expensive, and they have also done taupe quite well. But if you ask me which one will you recommend, the taupe one or the Juvia's Place one, I will also go for the Juvia's Place one. But this is also a nice palette. This is how it looks like. It has a nice range of colors and it has some depth as well. There is some deep shades here and there are different tones of taupe. I think these two are more towards the grayish taupe, and this one has a little bit of that pinky mauviness to it, and there is a deep taupe here. All these shades are super sparkly and shimmery. I think quality wise they are okay. They are not the best quality. They don't have that amazing sparkly, like that intense sparkly effect. So if you are looking for more muted taupes, these are good to go. In fact, the Juvia's Place one I would say are much more intense than this one. But this is more of a muted taupe palette. If you're looking for something more muted, more everyday friendly, this is something which you can consider. I'm seeing these shadows in the sun right now and they are sparkling so beautifully. So they are not super intense, but they are not super low sparkling quality as well. They actually look really pretty on the eyes. The sparkle is very elegant sort of sparkle. One taupe shade which I just love is from this palette from ABH. This is the ABH palette which is called the Rose Metals palette. You can still get this palette, it's available, and I have a full like a comparison video of all the ABH palettes like these on my channel. If you're interested, I can leave a link to the video in the description box. So this is how this palette looks like. The color of this palette is also like very taupey to me, has a taupey vibe to it. Just love the color on this, a very metallic taupey vibe. And here in this palette, here you have this one shade. It is super gorgeous taupey kind of a shade, very intense, very smooth, very soft. And this taupe has a slight greenish undertone to it, like a olivey undertone to it, and it's super intense. And I just love how all the shades just complement this taupe shades. This palette has more warm tone shades, so the look which you're going to get with this taupe shade from this palette is going to be a little bit more warm toned, but it looks super beautiful, very intense. This also has sparkles, but it's not as sparkly as some of the others I showed you from the singles or the Juvia's Place one. This also has sparkles, but it is more intense metallic kind of a taupe, and it's just super nicely pigmented. So if you're considering this palette, which I think is a great palette to have, and if you get this palette, you will also get one taupey kind of shade. Next, I have the last two palettes which I want to show you, and these are my favorite eyeshadow palettes when I want to pick up any palette for a taupey eyeshadow or eye look. So the first one is the Makeup by Mario palette. This is the newer palette, the holiday release from last year, I think. This is the Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette, and this is how it looks like. I have already done video on this palette. The previous palette I showed you was a more warm toned palette. This one is a more neutral cool kind of a palette. So if you're looking for neutral or cool toned eyeshadow vibes, then this is a great palette which has very nice taupe eyeshadows. These two shades right here I would say are super nice taupe shades which have a lot of sparkle. So when you wear this, especially if you wear it at night for parties or like going out dinner, they just look so beautiful. It is infused with different kind of sparkles. If I can see here, some champagne, some blue, some silver, some gold, and it has a light taupey base to it as well, like a taupey brown base to it as well. So the base and the whole sparkling effect of this eyeshadow, it just makes for a beautiful eyeshadow look. I just love this one. You can also like say that this is kind of a silvery taupe. This one and this one both have that light gray sort of a vibe to them. This palette has a black, it has a brown, so you will get a complete taupe eye look with this palette. And every time I have used these two shades, the eye look has just turned beautiful. In fact, the blue also looks really good with these two shades. I have really enjoyed this palette when I got it last year. I have used it a ton during the holidays, and I think it's a very nice muted neutral sort of a palette. If you want to work with only the mattes, then also you will get some really pretty looks. So this is a very versatile kind of a palette from Makeup by Mario, and it has some amazing taupe shades. So if you like taupes, you can definitely consider the Makeup by Mario palette. And the top rated palette for today and my go-to palette for taupey eyeshadows is definitely this one. I don't know how many times I've used this on the channel, so I have not used it for today's eye look. I have used something else, but this is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This is such a staple in my collection. I just cannot tell you how much I will recommend this palette to anyone who wants a neutral eyeshadow palette or a nude eyeshadow palette or a everyday friendly eyeshadow palette. This is an amazing one. So this is how the palette looks like. Okay, and there are some beautiful taupey shades in this palette. There are three, I would say, which are really good. Some of the mattes also have a taupey vibe, so you can use the mattes, the light matte shades in the crease or for all over the eyes. But the metallic taupey shades are something which I just love. There is one which is quite muted, kind of a metallic taupe shade. Okay, it's very similar to the single eyeshadow which I showed you at first, very similar to that. And then you have this one, Filigree, which is my favorite taupey eyeshadow from this palette. In fact, I did a short yesterday where I've used this eyeshadow. So this is also super nice Filigree. Okay, and I've used this one so much. It's a little bit on the deeper side, deeper taupey vibe. It has a lot of gray in it, but on the eyes, and especially with the play of colors and the play of mattes from this palette, it looks like a nice taupe on the eyes. And this one also, it's super nice. This is the shade Delilah, and this has so much of sparkles. This is that classic taupe which I've shown you in the singles as well, like not too gray, not too brown kind of a taupe. So if you like sparkly taupes, you have that also. And I just love the range of colors in this palette. There are some deep tones in the palette, some mid-tone shades, there are some pinks as well. So if you just want to do a little muted pink shade, that also is possible. And it's a very nice everyday neutral palette which you can have. And if you are a taupe eyeshadow palette lover like me, you can definitely consider this palette. It's a great one from Natasha Denona. So those are all the taupe eyeshadows which I have and I love, and I'm sure there may be some other palettes here and there which have some taupey eyeshadows as well, but I think these are my go-to, so I wanted to show you my go-to ones today. I hope this video was helpful. I will definitely recommend you to try taupe eyeshadows if you haven't already, and I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're watching me for the first time, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again really soon in my next video. Bye.